Hello, hello. Thank you, Adriana, for being here. Today we're celebrating World Intellectual Property Day, April 26th. And this year the theme is We Can Do It, towards women empowerment, those artists and writers and creators and entrepreneurs. So we're very happy to have today Adriana Herrera, who is a book writer. Adriana, thank you for being here. And if you can take it from here and let us know a little bit about yourself, about your amazing career as a writer.
Hi, thank you for having me. And yeah, so I'm Adriana Herrera, or that's my pen name. My actual name is Laura Adriana Rodriguez Simons. I am a romance writer, so I write romance books. I have been published since 2019. And this next month, I'm going to be publishing my 12th book, my 12th
Wow.
novel. I am from the Dominican Republic. I was born and raised there, and I moved to the US. I live in New York. I moved here about 20 years ago, which is a very long time, and have been working mostly nonprofit, specifically around gender-based violence is my background. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided to write a romance novel. Romance novels have been one of my favorite things to read since I was really young, and I thought I just wanted to try it out, and I tried it out, and I wrote one, and
And you get published, so
yeah,
congratulations.
thank you.
And you've been nominated or recognized in several reviews, right? If you can tell us a little bit about that. I know you've been bestseller.
Yeah, so one of my books at the USA Today bestsellers list a few years ago, and I've my books have been well received. Like, it's been really surprising and interesting. Like, the books I write very specifically around Latin culture. Like, my mission as a writer is to center Afro-Caribbean people, specifically our culture, our history, our happy endings. So it's been really nice to see people find the books. I think a lot of Latin women specifically who read a lot of romance haven't had the chance to read about Latin people. So it's been great to see, like, the New York Times, like, my books have been featured on the TODAY Show, which is like a pretty like big morning show here in the US. Like, I've gotten really great reviews from Publishers Weekly, like the different trade reviews, which is kind of like what the industry like considers like the professional like reviews that give like the book kind of like the nod of approval. And I've been nominated for a couple of awards. I was nominated for a Lambda Award, which is the Queer Fiction Award. One of my books was a finalist a few years ago, and just last month, one of my books won an Audie, which is like the Oscars for audiobooks. So I won
Wow,
one of my books.
congratulations. Oh my
Yeah, so one of my
God.
books won in one of the categories as the best book of the year. It's called my last contemporary romance. I write contemporary romance and historical romance. So yeah, it's been good.
Oh my God. I'm so proud to be Dominican and know that you're Dominican and actually known you like since I was a little girl. So seeing you
Yes.
succeed in your career as a writer has been amazing for all of us Dominican women as well. And also that you highlight our culture in your writing. So that is beautiful to see. Congratulations in so many ways. I mean,
Thank
we're
you.
so proud. So what are so we've heard all the nice things. What are those challenges that you faced during your career? I mean, I know, for example, that having a publisher publish your book, it's a big deal as a writer. How is that? How was that back in 2019 for you? And what were those things? And in terms of contracts, in terms of how has intellectual property protection help you out in all of those steps you had to take? If you can just let us know a little bit on that end as well.
I mean, I mean, it's interesting that the publishing industry can be, specifically when you are a person that's writing like from like a minority group, right? So like I'm writing women of color, I'm writing, a lot of my romance novels have LGBTQ protagonists. And so just kind of like having these types of stories that are not like what the mainstream has always been, was challenging. When I wrote my first novel, it's called American Dreamer, and it was a gay romance. It was like two gay men who were the main characters. There wasn't any other romance novel with Dominican characters who were in a romance novel. So it was hard to even get publishers to be like, this is something that we could sell. So it was challenging in that sense. And my first contract, I mean, I have to say I was lucky. Like I have a lot of friends who wrote for 10 years and tried to get published for 10 years or even longer and couldn't get like their books published. And American Dreamer was my first book that I ever wrote. And with that book, I got a literary agent and I got a publishing contract. So I was really lucky in that sense. Like my road to publishing was pretty short. But like the first publishing contract I got was like with no advance. So basically, like what I was able to get was like money after the fact once like the royalties started coming in. So in
Oh,
that sense, like I was lucky enough to have an agent who could like negotiate a better contract for me, like given the fact that they didn't want to give me an advance because I was like a risky investment, given the fact that I was writing this like type of character that they weren't really like accustomed to marketing. She was able to kind of negotiate a higher royalty. So even though I didn't get an advance, like I still get royalties from those books that are a nicer percentage than if I had gotten an advance. And so
okay. So
that's,
in that end, it worked out because all of a sudden your books are selling so perfectly, right? So you got your revenue, but after the fact.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think part of it is like thinking about like the long term, because one of the things that you do when you kind of sign with a publisher is that you essentially sign away your intellectual property. And now with indie publishing, like a lot of people self-publish now, and self-publishing is only getting bigger. Like I have to really think about like, do I want to sell this as a contracted book to a publisher, or do I want to keep that property and publish it myself? Because when I self-published, I'm making 70% of the royalties. When I publish with a publishing house, I'm making maybe 10% of every print
Wow.
book. So it's very, very different. Like technically the publishing house is taking on the risk of like the production, like, printing it out and all of that. But the reality is that now self-publishing is like an industry and it's pretty easy to get yourself puffed up. So I'm in that sense, like I think about my intellectual property all the time. And when I'm starting a new project, I think, is this like better as a self-pub or as something that I can give my agent so that my agent can sell it to the house that I've been with. I've been with the same publishing house since my first book, and like I've done like 12 books with them, but I also have my own stuff, like my self pubs that I own. And so I'm what they call a hybrid author. So I'm doing both traditional publishing house
Okay.
and my own stuff, because
Okay.
mainly because I want.
So you have already done like your self-publishing part with some of your books?
Yeah, so I have 12 novels that I've done with my publishing house, and I have about 7 other books that I publish on my own. So, I
Nice.
mean, I've like 20 books, but like I have a part of my business that is self-published.
And how has like the reach to the people has been? I mean, to the readers. Do you feel like if you do your self-publishing, it reaches all of your readers, or having it via your publishing company, it's better at the end of the day?
Right now, honestly, like I feel like it really depends on the project. Like, for example, I'm writing this historical romance series, and historical romance, there's not a lot of Latin stories in historical romance. Like my historical series is the only one out there right now, other than another one that just came out. But when I published my first one last year, it was like literally the only Latina heroine that was like in the market. And just because that was so new, like it made sense to do it with my publishing house, because they could like put it in the bookstores and like really try to push it out. Like the distribution that they could give me, they could get it on the Barnes and Nobles, they could get it in the airports. Like that was like strategically thinking, like for a book that's like that new, like you want to do something like with a little bit more resources in terms of market. But like if I'm writing like a Christmas like romance novel where it's like cute and like it's something that like I can like write really fast and I can get a cover for it, like I'll do that with my self-pub, because I know that September to November people are desperate for romance novels about Christmas, and like people are looking for them, and I have a readership already. So like I know that at least my readers will see it, and I'll be making 70% of that money. And every year I can like put a sale or like change the cover. So it really does depend. Like I always tell my people that like being a writer is two jobs. One is writing the book and the other one selling the book. And I see myself as like an entrepreneur. Like I have a business, and my business is writing romance novels that I'm trying to sell and like make money from. So I mean, of course, like I do it because I love it, but also like it's a lot of work. So I want to be compensated. So
Of course, it's a lot of
yeah.
work, and I mean, I think you fit the profile perfectly for today's celebration of women. We can do it, and we're looking at a successful story of a writer and a businesswoman as well, because as you say, self-publishing takes a lot of time, and it's a business that you have to run by yourself or with the staff that you're working with. So yes, it's that way. So, what have you seen any hiccups in your career regarding IP, or have you felt like intellectual property has got your back, or how do you see IP as part of your day to day work and towards maybe in relation to your publishing or advertising and all of those things?
Well, I mean, I have like, I think part of what like you have to protect yourself is to protect like the product, right? So every time I like my publisher, part of what they do, part of what they're contracted to do is that they have to register the books I publish with them under copyright, under my pen name, Adriana
Okay.
Herrera. And
Okay.
so that's part of their like job. And then for myself pubs, like my husband is kind of like my business manager. So
Okay. Very good. So
so
he helps you
he
out with
makes
that part.
yeah, he's very supportive, and he really kind of like does enjoy like the business side of things. So we have an LLC
Okay.
that's like kind of like my company, and then like under that LLC like we will register like all of my self-published books. I have like registered the copyright, so that like there's no like if
Super.
anyone is using it, or if anyone's using like material from my books, like I have like that legal protection.
Super. Super. So you have your copyright in place, you have all of your contract in place. So that's great. I think that's actually part of growing as a business and making it right for when success come how it has come to you. What can you say to all of those women that are trying to make it, that they also want to do what you're doing, maybe not in terms of what your books are actually about, but to become a writer, an entrepreneur, a woman of color trying to thrive into the business world.
I mean, I think you should just like do it. I think right now, like we're in a time where the like access to an audience is fairly like not I wouldn't say easy, but it's so much more accessible. Like audiences, there's so many captive audiences out there. And specifically if you have something that like you think you can't do because perhaps like it's not like something that like culturally we do. Like for me, for example, I I studied economics in college, and then I decided to go into nonprofit, and like I did social work for many years, and it was work that I loved and enjoyed. But like my passion has always been books. And it's something that like I never thought, because like in the DR, I never met someone that was like a professional writer. Like that wasn't anything that I thought I could be. And so I kind of just did it as something fun. Like I actually started writing when I was in my master's of social work program. And then I was like, this is actually something that really gives me a lot of joy. I enjoy it so much. I think it's important for there to be books about women who look like me getting like a happy ending. So I did it, and like I found a readership. Like I'm still kind of like starting out my career because I haven't even been published for 5 years, but like it's been surprising to see how many people are engaging with the work and excited that it's there. So just because you don't see the audience doesn't mean it's not there, specifically because for us, typically the audiences, the clients, the market that we are aiming for as women of color is usually underserved. And like they're just waiting for us to come, and they are like they've been waiting for like our clothing, our books, our music. Like they're there waiting.
Another question, Adriana, have you ever or are you planning to take your books to another level, maybe being in the film industry? How do you feel about that?
I mean, that would be the dream, right? But I do have a film agent. So part of what you do when you kind of come into trying to get your books published is if you want to be in like the traditional what they call the traditional publishing setting, which is essentially you sell your books to a publishing house and they kind of like print it and distribute it, publish it and distribute it. So I have a literary agent, and she does all of the selling of my books. But I also have a film and TV agent, and that film and TV agent shops like the adaptation rights for my books. And one of my books right now, like we have been in conversation with a couple of production companies because they are interested in adapting one of my series, my historical romance series. And so part of like what has been interesting is that they unlike the traditional publishing, like book publishing houses who just kind of buy the book or buy like the 3 books that you are selling, but to be in film adaptation, they want to buy the universe. So like, for example, Bridgerton, which is like a famous, now like a
Right.
really
I'm a
big,
fan of that one.
a very popular series. So those books, that was a book series. It was a 20-book series that the author Julia Quinn had written over like many years, but like they own the universe. So now they're doing a spin-off from that series called Queen Charlotte. So essentially like what they want is that they own like that world, and from that world they can do like any projects that they want. So it's been interesting just having conversations with my film agent and my literary agent about how that would happen, just because like I have now 3 books planned in that series, but I could write more, I could make other books, but like really considering how much I want to give up of that
Right.
universe. So that's been an interesting conversation around like my intellectual property, because it's a world that I created. And so like they're essentially like wanting to buy that world. So that was a surprising thing that I didn't really know happened when
That's
you were
super
talking.
super interesting. So if they take ownership on or buy ownership of that world that you mentioned, if you keep writing and um doing your universe bigger and have your own spin-off of that particular story, do they automatically own it, or for example they should purchase the additional writing on that, or the initial buyout buys everything that you write on all of the universe?
So I mean that's part of the conversation because there's only like 3 books planned on there. But
Okay.
technically once they own that universe, they can create their own stories from it. Like
Okay, so they're gonna have like the right to do their own story within your universe.
yeah,
Okay. So that's something that you really need to think about as
yeah,
the author of your universe again.
yeah. Yeah, so that's why you really have to then think about, like, is this production company a production company? Like, I am very, like, one something that's really important to me is the representation. Like, I write Latin women. That series in particular is set in Paris in 1889 at the Paris World's Fair, but all of my characters are Latin. And so it would be very, like, the main character is a Dominican woman. So for me, it would be important that their actress that they hire has to be like a Dominican actress. So those things for me are very important. So I would have to like be like the production company that I would agree to work with would have to like be willing to like make some
So
of those meet some of those requirements. And if not, then I would have to say, like, does their team have a Latin person? Does their team, like, who is the screenwriter that they're gonna hire? Is it a Latin person, or is there like a white guy? I don't know. I don't want that to happen because my work is like, my point of view is very much like, you know, Dominican. And so all those things are things that you have to think about because you really are kind of like giving them the world that you created. So
complete ownership. So
yeah,
you're going to, of course, be recognized as the author of the universe. But at the end of the day, they can adapt as
yes.
they would want to. And I think it's super great that you can just put your requirements in there. For example, I would be so happy to see a Dominican artist, a Dominican person, like doing the role of your of your
Yeah.
being the actress of your book.
Me too. And so that's the kind of thing, like sometimes they're, like they don't have the budget or they just can't do it. So it has to really be like a really like, you have to know what you're willing to give up or like what you're okay with. So, I mean, I'm not anywhere near like, this is just like conversation. Like, we're not in a place that we're like talking about like it actually happening. But even when you are in conversations, these things come up.
Right. Right. Well, that would be very interesting to see. And I will request another interview if that actually comes up. So let me know.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Adriana, for having us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, to hear about your story, to hear about your success story, and how, as a writer, as an entrepreneur, you have been to succeed in the world and see how IP has helped you in that career path. So, thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you.